Mass Effect is one of my favourite game series, and I really hope the next one, if it ever releases, is also very good. I of course platinumed them all, and seeing as how it's been a while, I decided to take a trip down memory lane and rank all the platinums from easiest to hardest. But first, some rules. I know you're thrilled to hear that, it'll be quick. First, the original trilogy was made significantly easier platinum-wise in the Legendary Edition, as they removed insanity trophies as well as adjusting others, so I'm just going to ignore the Legendary Edition and focus on the hardest version of each game. Second, although I said platinum, I'm taking all the DLC trophies into account for the ranking. Originally I was going to separate base game and DLC, but I changed my mind as I don't think it really makes a difference and it's much more concise if they're all in one section. Thirdly, I'm ranking these from the perspective of someone that is specifically going for the trophies and not just happening upon them in a casual run. Finally, and this is the most important, this is just a bit of fun. Don't get mad if you disagree or if I might have forgotten something, it might have slipped my mind, it's been a little while after all. But do let me know in a nice way, that is always appreciated. I think that's all the admin out of the way, I should go and start with... I was really not expecting to put Mass Effect 1 as the easiest, but here we are, let me explain my point. The main thing about Mass Effect 1 is that it requires a lot of playthroughs. I think the minimum is 3, and personally I took 5. Those 3 required playthroughs are not speedruns through the main story either, you need to play like most of the side stuff for them. The reason for that is the ally trophies, which need you to play through the majority of the game with each of the 6 squad mates. As you can only have 2 with you at a time, 3 playthroughs is at least highly advised if not straight up required, but I do think it is straight up required. Now I did some digging for the exact requirements for these and personally could not find anything concrete and a lot of contradictory information from different sources. I do remember personally it is the vast majority of the side quests as well as obviously most of the main quests as well for these to unlock. Most of the other trophies need you to hit all the skills a certain number of times. These are kind of a hassle, some of them, but if you are specifically going for them and making a conscious effort to use them, it's not a big issue. Then there's the hardcore and insanity playthroughs. Now, first off, I am aware there's a glitch you can do to basically skip the whole game straight to the final boss to get these trophies. Although I'm not exactly sure how it works, so if you want to know how that works, please just look it up yourself. I don't actually know. I didn't do it because I didn't know about it at the time. I'm not above using glitches, just didn't look it up and didn't know. That being said though, doing it normally wasn't very difficult, especially after the 3 previous playthroughs. I was already max level with good gear going into New Game Plus, so I just blitzed the main story as fast as I could and got them done within a day each, which I think is pretty good. Now, there is one thing to quickly note about Mass Effect 1, and that is that, you know, obviously this is a PlayStation-focused channel with the trophy lingo instead of achievements, but there was a DLC that never made it onto PlayStation. It's called Pinnacle Station, and it has its own achievements, so I just want to say, I didn't forget about it, I am taking it into account. It's been well over 10 years since I played it, but I don't remember the achievements being any trouble whatsoever. I just wanted to mention it so people didn't think I forgot about it. Funnily enough, I think the reason it's not on PlayStation, if I remember the story correctly, is that they lost the source code. Might need to fact check me on that one, but these stories are always fascinating to me, like how do you lose the source code? It's absolute madness. But getting back on track, Mass Effect 1 is tedious with how much you need to replay like most of the game again, but it's not difficult, even on Insanity, which is the main reason I put it as the easiest of the games of the Platinum. I look forward to all the disagreements. Andromeda has the lowest platinum percentage of any of the games, so you may be surprised that it's in the easier half of the list. It's also the game that took me personally the longest time apparently, so I was also surprised about that. However, the reason it took me the longest though wasn't because I was playing it a lot, it was because I was waiting for my strike teams to level up. This is time gated, sort of like in a mobile game, you know, like in Clash of Clans or whatever, you little guy takes like 8 hours to build a house and you've got to come back. I assume that's how Clash of Clans works, I have never played the game. Anyway, it's sort of the same deal here, you send them out, some time passes, and then they come back and level up, rinse and repeat until you've done the relevant strike trophies. Apparently there's also an app for your phone for this, and you bet I absolutely did not use it. Apparently it can also bug the achievement. I didn't know that at the time, that's not why I didn't use it, but I'm just going to say I did do it for that reason, to sound more on top of it. You know, looking at the rare trophies for this game, I am very surprised. Completing 20 remnant puzzles, they don't move or change, just look up where they are. Kill 100 enemies while hovering, just do that. Keep the Nomad airborne for 35 seconds, there's a good spot for it probably. I guess people really didn't want to trophy hunt this game, and yeah, that's fair. We were all pretty bummed out when it came out, even if since I have softened on it quite a fair amount. There's also Matchmaker, which is for doing 3 different romances, which, not difficult, it is going to eat up time though, and it's annoying because I don't think you need to do more than 2 playthroughs for all the other trophies. Finally, there's the Insanity run, which I do remember being quite difficult. I specifically remember there being this mission with like a long hallway, which took me a while. I can't remember the specifics, sorry about that. It's been 7 years, really? Now that is mad. Insanity in this game is helped a lot by the fact that you can ignore most of the game if you just beeline the main story. A lot of this game is side content technically, which is fine for me personally because, you know, I'm going to do it all when it first came out anyway, and it did make Insanity quicker, so I guess I appreciate it in the end. Obviously this was also on New Game Plus, the Insanity run, so I had already leveled skills and stuff like that to make it easier. Overall, going through the list, I'm actually not too sure why Andromeda is the rarest, other than people just didn't like it. But hey, go back to it now, let's get that percentage up. It's probably fixed now. I don't know, I haven't played it since it came out. It'll be fun though. I'm gonna be real with you, I was 100% thinking that Mass Effect 2 was gonna be the hardest before I actually looked up the list and, you know, did a bit of research. This was mainly down to Insanity, I think. Even though it's not the top of the list, Mass Effect 2 is the hardest on Insanity. For specifics, basically all the collector missions are the biggest challenge. Special mention to that Horizon mission where you have to defend the radio tower, I want to say, where you're getting jumped from all sides and it's an absolute cluster. There's husks coming at you, there's the big Praetorian dude. I have had nightmares about that mission. I'm going to say it's the hardest mission in the series, and I think I will die on that hill. When they announced the Legendary Edition, I was dreading doing it again, and then I found out an interesting little tidbit that completely changed my experience. You see, I was doing my Insanity run on New Game Plus because I assumed that having all the powers and weapons and whatnot would make it a lot easier than starting from scratch. I didn't really think too much about it, to be honest. Then in the preparation for Legendary Edition, I learned that due to just how the enemy scaling works in this game, New Game Plus is actually significantly harder than New Game Insanity. So I was skeptical of this and gave it a little go, and yeah, it's a lot easier. I gave myself a much more difficult time because I just assumed things. So let that just be a lesson right there. Not sure what the lesson is? Look before you leap, maybe? We'll go with that. So yeah, that fact may have been the sole reason that I bumped this game from the top spot, but it is far from a free Insanity. Like, you will still die a lot, it is still the hardest one, but I would say maybe half as many deaths in my experience from New Game Plus Insanity. Now that's a lot just on the Insanity difficulty, but the reason for that is if you actually look at the other trophies, there's really not a whole lot here that'll give you trouble. There's a couple in the Arrival DLC that may pose some trouble, but they can be made easier through a guide or lowering the difficulty. I guess there's also having everyone survive the suicide mission, but not only are there loads of guides for that at this point, but I'd also argue most of the choices are actually common sense, like send the robot as the tech expert, let the biotic masters make the shield, don't let Jacob do anything. You know, common sense. If you couldn't tell, the Insanity run is doing almost all the heavy lifting for this placement, and I'd recommend saving it for after you've done everything else, so you can just skip the harder optional missions if you really need to on it. You at least have that luxury here. And by process of elimination, you've figured out that Mass Effect 3 is the hardest platinum, according to me at least. Can't wait for the disagreements there. Going in, I was actually expecting this to be in the bottom half, but I guess I forgot just how much can go wrong for you in this game when it comes to trophy hunting. I'll start with a personal one, but that damn mech one where you have to steal an Atlas, for whatever reason, I really struggled with this every time I go for it. Yes, I know, get good and all that, but I was either way too strong and killed the Atlas before I could get in, or too weak and was flopping around like a fish. But on to the actual hard trophies. First, there's a chance that upon doing everything else, you actually won't have the 5,000 enemies trophy, especially if you skip multiplayer. This is easily remedied though, as there's a place right at the start of the game with infinite spawns. This is where I farmed it. It was a pretty good place. Going into the DLC quick, first, Omega, you have to do the side quests. Now that sounds incredibly simple, but they're really easy to miss and you can't backtrack and get them. So if you miss the sofa or whatever, or couch for the Americans, get ready to replay a fair chunk of the game to get back to this point. This is why saving your game regularly and in different slots is important, kids, based on a true story. Looking at the trophy percentages, a load of people didn't do the combat simulator in the Citadel DLC, which is surprising to me as that's actually one of my favourite parts. Getting to team up with the old party members again, it's a blast. I love the combat simulator. Now I don't remember it being difficult, but the percentage is really low, so I had to bring it up. Okay, you want me to talk about Insanity? I get it, I'm getting to it. Thanks to the improvements to combat in this game from 2, you have way more options and it's just a lot faster than Mass Effect 2. And yes, I do think it is easier than Mass Effect 2, the Insanity specifically, though it's significantly harder than Mass Effect 1. But the thing that makes Mass Effect 3's Insanity harder is the extra trophy for needing to do every mission. There's no skipping the hard ones here, you do everything. Okay, technically you might not have to do this. You see, Mass Effect 3 is cool in that a lot of trophies have a single player and a multiplayer way of completing them. I do think Andromeda did this as well, but I didn't play multiplayer in that game, like, at all. Instead of doing all the missions in Insanity, you can go in multiplayer and do all the base game maps on gold difficulty, and I'm going to be honest though, I found this way harder than just doing the single player missions on Insanity. There's also the fact that it is just harder to skip missions anyway in Mass Effect 3 due to how the story is laid out, so you might as well just do it in single player. You have to do an Insanity run anyway, and there's probably not that many people still playing the online, though online was really fun. Mass Effect 3 online was goated. I had an absolute blast back in the day with it. To round off, Mass Effect 3 makes you do everything on Insanity, as well as some finicky DLC trophies, make it surprisingly the hardest Mass Effect game to platinum. And that's the list. Do you agree with my ranking, or would you have swapped them around? Honestly, totally get if you would, and I'm curious to know, as this was a lot tighter than my other rankings I've done, which you can find on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist and everything. While you're down there, why not subscribe and like so you never miss a video? It's free, and even if you don't use the subscription box, it helps me out at no loss to yourself. For now though, I should go. Hunt them trophies, and I'll see you next time.